Next on Newsmax Prime, Baltimore burning. Will what happened last night happen again tonight? Bob Ehrlich and Kerik weigh in. Then, the Clinton Foundation under fire, but finding support from an unlikely source. Newsmax CEO Chris Ruddy. My conversation with the boss coming up. Plus, it's our opening night, and from the video vault, a couple of TV premieres that we would hate to emulate. It's Tuesday, April 28th, and Newsmax Prime starts right now. Welcome into the opening edition of Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. It is great to have you along. We should note that we will be here every weekday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern Time and again at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 o'clock in the East on a nightly basis, Monday through Friday. Now, some stories of prime interest tonight. Baltimore ablaze. Scenes from last night as that city remains on edge this evening as its 10 p.m. curfew rapidly approaches. Meantime, Al Arabiya Network is citing Iranian news agencies and reporting that Iran has opened fire at a U.S. cargo ship and directed it to an Iranian port there on Iran's southern coast. We'll have more on that a little later in our program. But first, for more on the deteriorating race relations and riot in Baltimore, here's Newsmax contributor Miranda Kahn.
More than 200 people, JD, have been arrested in Baltimore so far, and a curfew will come down in the city in just a few hours. What will happen tonight has everyone on edge, with the memories of last night's violence still fresh in their minds. Overnight, the city of Baltimore was set ablaze after protests turned into a violent riot. Baltimore Police Commissioner Anthony Batts addressed the riot, calling those involved criminals.
I'm disappointed that we cannot be more responsible and an embarrassment that we have nationwide in our community. This is not protesting. This is not your First Amendment rights. This is just criminal acts doing damage to a community.
President Obama also weighed in, calling on police to do some soul searching on how they handle African American suspects.
We can't just leave this to the police. I think there are police departments that have to do some soul searching.
Meanwhile, Maryland's Governor Larry Hogan is trying to piece the city back together.
This is not the Baltimore that we know and love. This is certainly not putting us in very good light. It doesn't help with tourism. It doesn't help bringing in businesses, but we're going to be stronger after this is over with.
The people of Baltimore are now dealing with cleaning up their city, but the question on everyone's mind, can the community recover? Back to you, JD.
Thanks, Miranda. Now, for more on this developing story, we turn to our two guests. First, the former governor of Maryland, Bob Ehrlich, and from Newsmax New York, former NYPD Commissioner Kerik. We should note Bernie is the author of the newly released book, From Jailer to Jailed. And Bernie, let's start with you. The current Maryland governor says, quote, "These riots are not gonna happen tonight." Strong words, but Bernie, do you think he's right?
Well, I don't know. They've been calling in resources today. They got 150 New Jersey State Troopers. He's got the National Guard out. I'm sure Baltimore and the Maryland State Police have an enormous contingent out there tonight. Hopefully, they could keep it under control.
Bob, as the former governor of Maryland, you take a look at this situation. Why the delay? Larry Hogan said he was waiting to send in the Guard, but he didn't get an invitation from the mayor.
You could hear his frustration, JD, in last night during that press conference. Obviously, the governor's not going to want to move until the mayor makes that call. The press today has been asking what communications took place during the critical hours of 10 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. Those questions need to be answered because Larry and the state was fully ready to mobilize, but that call did not come, obviously, till things had gotten out of control.
Kerik, one other quick question to you. The New York Times reports a police spokesman says officers took a restrained approach early on because so many of the people involved seem to be minors. Do you buy that explanation?
Well, I think it could be a combination of that and the message that came from the mayor to give these people distance. And basically, they give them too much distance. You know, it wasn't a peaceful protest. These were rioters. These were people, you know, pillaging and destroying property. And the mayor said she wanted to give them distance. So I think it was a combination of both.
Bernie Kerik, we thank you for your insights and for your experience there with the NYPD. Let's concentrate on the situation in Baltimore with a guy who grew up close by, and I served with him in Congress. We've already heard from him somewhat here during this part of the program, former Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich. Bob, politics and policy are one thing, but personally to you, when you saw what happened yesterday, what was your reaction?
Embarrassment, anger, frustration. I know this neighborhood, JD. I grew up close to it. I know West Baltimore very well. I've represented parts of Maryland in the state legislature and the Congress with you, then obviously as governor. And what Governor Hogan says is absolutely accurate. This really hurts you on many fronts. But the bottom line, it hurts the innocent people down there, the businesses that were burned, the cars that were torched. Obviously, most folks down there are law-abiding people. They just want to survive. And this incident, these incidents, these riots make that survival more difficult.
And speaking of the situation now in Baltimore, a city with great civic pride, I can recall we were in Congress. We had our orientation session right there in Baltimore. You were a proud host. How does the city get back on its feet, or is this still very much a crisis situation in your estimation?
Well, it's been a crisis situation for decades. Crack, the drug epidemic has hurt every city, obviously. Baltimore, no exception. You've had flight, middle-class flight out of the city, all races. A lot of poor folks concentrated in particular areas. Post-industrial jobs, the industrial era jobs drying up, those blue-collar jobs. Without an education, without fathers in the home, something JD, as you know, is passionate with me and with you. I just wonder if those fathers would have, those missing fathers would have been in those homes yesterday, how many of those teenagers would have gone out and accomplished these riots? And that's precisely what occurred. It began with young people, high school age kids doing this stuff, and they were very aggressive with the police. So no short-term solution here. It's not just money. As you know, trillions of dollars been pumped into poor neighborhoods around the country over the last 40, 50, 60 years, the Great Society and the war on poverty. But what really hurts me here, JD, is in this area, there had been some progress. That CVS was a big deal, the one you saw torched on national TV. That was a big deal in this neighborhood. The buildings that were burned, the nonprofit was interviewed today, the pastor. There had been some progress, some marginal progress in these areas, and now you're back to square one. It's going to be very difficult to convince businesses to reopen, obviously, their businesses when things are this tense. It's
a community you love. It's a state you used to govern. Now,
yes,
as a private citizen, if you were offering advice to Governor Larry Hogan or to the mayor of Baltimore, Bob, in the minute that remains, what would that advice be?
We're all in this together. Forget race, forget class. We're going to live here. Nobody's going anywhere. The criminals have to be picked up. We had the videotape is there, obviously, and once those criminals are tried, we're going to heal. And that's not just a phony word here, JD. It's talk it out. Understand what the criminal justice process is all about. Try to convince those businesses and those nonprofits and those pastors to lead and get it going. It's not just politicians here. And also, at some point, get to this issue of family disintegration.
Former Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich, my former congressional colleague in the class of 1994. Bob, we thank you for Skyping in with us this evening, and we look forward to visiting with you in the not-too-distant future.
JD, congratulations on your show. Love to Miss Mary. Proud of you, my friend.
Thanks very much. Former Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich. When we come back, what about this talk? Gangs uniting to target cops nationwide? We'll have more on that next. Stay tuned.